Should I
A
unmute
very
the
good,
video also?
yeah, a very good evening to all our teachers. I, Aparna from Gurushala team, welcomes you all to the Samwad. Gurushala program is an initiative of Indus Stars Limited and Vodafone India Foundation. It is implemented by Pratham Education Foundation. Today's topic is exploring the foundation of English language, and our guests for today are from a very well known organization called English Language Teachers Association of India. They specialize in teaching English language and also hold webinars weekly. So I would like to invite our esteemed guests for today. First, we have Professor K. Elango, National Secretary of English Language Teachers Association of India, and was formerly working as Professor and Head, Department of English, Anna University in Chennai. Secondly, we have Professor P. N. Ramani, member and Executive Committee, ELTAI, English Studies Consultant and Quality Assurance Specialist. Formerly, he was working as a professor and quality assurance expert for the Ministry of Manpower, Sultanate of Oman. Thirdly, we have Professor S. Mohanraj, Member Executive Committee of ELTAI, who is an academic advisor, Nethaji Subhash Open University in Hyderabad. Formerly, he was a professor in English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. A very warm welcome to all three of you. We would be delighted to hear your amazing ideas during this session. The stage is all yours. You can now start.
Thank you, Aparna. Good evening to every one of you. We are happy to be part of this particular webinar. Before we start off the webinar, I would like to spend a moment on the association that we three belong to. It's already been mentioned. The acronym is ELTAI, English Language Teachers Association of India. It's the oldest and the largest association for English language teachers in our country. It has about 5,000 members and 52 chapters in different parts of the country. You might wonder why there are so many chapters with us. The reason is very simple. We have got about 12 million teachers in our country teaching at different levels: primary level, secondary level, and a tertiary level. Having headquartered at Chennai, it's extremely difficult for us to reach out to all the teachers in our country. That's the reason why we won't have as many chapters as possible. We are trying to reach out to the teachers through our chapters. In fact, we like to have more number of chapters. The association conducts various activities throughout the year. I don't think there is any week or a month which goes without some of our activities. I would like to briefly mention about the two activities that we conduct. One of the important activities that we conduct is the conference. It's an annual conference. It's an international conference. And our conference is usually attended by about 1,000 delegates from different parts of the country, again at different levels, from primary to tertiary university level. And we also get delegates from other countries. Our events are sponsored by some of the well-known publishers like Cambridge, Oxford, and lead organizations like British Council and Relo. They're all partners. They get speakers from their respective countries. And it's a 3-day event. We have different kind of activities like a number of workshops, panel discussions, roundtable conferences, and likewise we have got many activities. And many say that it is a useful activity that we conduct every year. Last year we had the conference in Amity University, which was our Golden Jubilee conference, that 50th conference. It went off really well, and you are welcome to attend our future conferences. Another important activity that we carry out is we bring out a journal called the Journal of English Language Teaching. Let me show you the journal that we bring out. It's a bi-monthly. It's rather slender. I want you to know that this is the oldest journal, not only in our country, even globally. If you look at only the bi-monthly, but if you're looking at quarterly, there are other journals. But if you look at only bi-monthly, this is the oldest journal. And we are planning to keep it very slender. The reason being, as and when possible, okay, bi-monthly, we would like to bring out some interesting articles. These articles are not theoretical articles. There are some practical tips, how to teach grammar, how to teach several aspects that we are doing in a classroom context. And it is sent free of cost to our members. First, you need to become a member of the association, then you get it free of cost. You're also welcome to contribute If you're conducting an experiment in your class and you felt excited about it and you feel like sharing with others, you can always write to this particular journal, and we do give the editorial help. And we also run a webinar. It's a fortnightly webinar. Let me stop with about our association. Let's get on with our webinar. The format of the webinar is, we are going to start with Professor Mohanraj. He will give his input for about 5 minutes, and that will be followed by Professor Ramani. Again, he will speak for about 5 minutes, after which I'm going to ask them some questions that you might like to ask them, like to get some kind of clarifications, because both of them are very experienced, very seasoned teachers. I will be asking them questions like, should we teach vocabulary? If so, are there different ways in which we can teach vocabulary? Should we teach pronunciation? Quite interestingly, when we are talking about our mother tongue, nobody talks about pronunciation, nobody talks about accent. But when it comes to English, everybody wants to speak English the way the native speakers speak English. So we need to go into the issues like, should we teach pronunciation? If so, what are the ways in which we can teach pronunciation? Should we teach grammar? At what level should we teach grammar? Okay, and other issues like the teacher training programs, professional development programs. We have governments, and we have got NGOs, we have got lead publishers. Different kind of people organize the training programs for teachers. Let's look into how far these programs are useful to teachers. Are they able to professionalize themselves? And if there is time toward the end, we'll get into the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody's talking about online teaching and learning. Is that something which is possible in rural areas? Okay, do you think that our learners are prepared for it? More than the learners, are our teachers prepared for going online? All said and done, whether it is online or offline, teacher is the key. So let's look at whether teachers can make a difference in the lives of the students. These are some of the issues that we are going to look at. So we are going to start off with Professor Mohanraj. Just a word about him. Professor Mohanraj is a very, very popular teacher. It's very difficult to come across anyone who is teaching at the tertiary level without knowing him. And it's very difficult for him to say no to any kind of academic help that we ask him. Over to Professor Mohanraj.
Thank you, Professor Elango. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a happy occasion that many of you who belong to the Gurushala have come here to know something about English language teaching in India. First, let's look at the place of English in India for a few minutes. Now, every language that we know has a status in our society. You are familiar with terms like mother tongue, regional language, national language, etc. Mother tongue is referred to as the language that we learn first in our life. This is the language we learn at home. This is the language that's available in plenty in our environment. And this is something that we are absolutely comfortable. We feel comfortable with. Therefore, we call it the first language. If there is a first language, obviously there has to be a second language, there has to be a third language, or whatever it is. Now we have two very interesting terms called the second language and the foreign language. Now let's think of a language like English in a country like India. What is English? Is it a second language or is it a foreign language? So to illustrate this, long ago, a linguist gave a beautiful story. I'm just going to narrate that same story to you so that you understand the difference between second language and foreign language. Now, here there was a family of cats. This cat, mother cat, used to go for a walk every evening with her 4 little kittens. The kittens were very naughty. They would not keep pace with the mother, but they would keep running away from the mother or stay behind. One day, as they ran ahead of the mother, they came across a dog. The dog was very fierce. The kittens got frightened, and in the meantime, when they were so frightened, meantime the mother joined them, and all the kittens hugged the mother and showed how frightened they were. The mother assured the kittens, "Don't worry, and it looked at the dog squarely, and instead of mewing, it started barking. It started barking exactly like a dog, and the dog, seeing a cat bark like himself, got really scared and ran away. When the dog had run quite some distance, the mother cat turned to the kittens and said, "This is why you should know a second language." Now, what's the meaning of this story? This story simply means second language is available to me within my environment. It makes me a little more powerful than I am with my first language. It gives me plenty of opportunities. It also helps me improve my status. Now, English, if it is a second language in our country, does it do all this? Let's just take a look at it. English certainly is in our environment. There is plenty of English all around us. It's there in our school. Most of the signboards in your school are in English. It's available on radio, television, newspapers, everywhere. It's available in business. If you go to shops, etc., you have lots of English. You have English in tourism. You have English in offices. You have English almost everywhere. It's there for you to find. And learning English, rightly or wrongly, in India, is considered a status symbol. It provides you a better status in the society. And with the knowledge of English, also the job prospects become better. Now, it's a major language of learning, or in the academic world, it's one of the languages that's used at almost all levels. And certainly in higher education, it's the sole language that we have. So, learning English has its own advantages. And when English is available all around us, it must not be really very difficult for us to learn English. Today, we will talk about how we can use English, how we can learn English with a lot of ease. Thank you. Thank you. And
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mohanraj. You mentioned that some teachers have apprehensions. They say that they are in rural areas, they are in villages. Actually, there is no English. At home, no English. Neighborhood, no English. School, no English. And English teachers themselves, okay, some say that no English. But if that is the case, okay, there are ways in which we could overcome that. You mentioned that we are immersed with a plenty of
right,
materials, right from newspapers, radio, television. These days we have got the online number of websites, podcasts. There are a number of things. It's up to us. Since we say that we are living in a global village, it is necessary for us to know the global language. Thanks, Professor Mohanraj, for making that clear to us. And the next is Dr. Ramani. And if you want to know how to express yourself concisely, how to express yourself precisely, and use the language economically, and at the same time in a very, very sophisticated manner, it's Dr. Ramani. We always go to him for such clarity with which he expresses himself. And let's listen in and let's find out what he has to say. Over to Dr. Ramani.
Thank you, Dr. Elango, for introducing me in that way. I'll talk very briefly about the various approaches and methods for teaching languages, including English, or as Dr. Mohanraj mentioned, for teaching English as a second language or as a foreign language. The language teaching approaches and methods. By approach and method, I mean how you teach a particular language, the way in which you teach a particular language. Now, any method or approach for teaching language will be influenced by, will be guided by two things. First, what is your understanding of language? What is language? You may call them theories about language. Is language a collection of grammatical structures like this is a book, that is a pen, this is my mother, I like my mother very much, I like my parents. These are simple structures that the language allows you to use. Or by language, do you mean how we use it for day-to-day purposes? For greeting one another, saying hello, good morning, good afternoon, how are you? For asking for information from somebody. If somebody invites you to visit them in their homes, if you're busy, if you're not free, how do you say politely, I'm sorry, I won't be able to come? So there are many purposes, or you may call them functions, for which we use English in our day-to-day life, in our social life, in our professional life, in business, in tourism. Dr. Mohanraj mentioned several areas in which language is used around us. We are all familiar with them. So this is the first thing that guides you how you want to teach a particular language to your children. The second thing is, what is your understanding of learning? How does learning take place? Does learning take place by following the teacher, repeating of the teacher in chorus? Now the whole class shouts, good morning, children. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. By repeating what the teacher says, not only for greeting, for so many other things, repeating a question, repeating an answer, repeating an explanation. You can also do it by listening to audio, video, watching video. So do you believe that learning takes place by imitation, by following somebody's model, and then repeating after that person? So imitation and repetition, mimicry and memorization also. But how long can you be doing this? How long can you be simply imitating others and repeating the same sentences, the same questions, the same phrases, the same words? So is language confined only to sentence level? I know how to form a sentence. Okay. Rama married Sita. Okay. I am a boy. She is a girl. Use a pronoun or a pronoun, use a verb, and then some other word after the verb to form a simple sentence. So do you learn language by simply putting words together to form sentences? Or do you learn a language by actually using the language in various situations, like at home, in school, talking to the teacher? You are called by the school principal to his or her room. The principal asks you a question. How do you answer that? So is learning taking place by using the language in various situations, improving the language in that process, and developing a very high level of competence in the language? So let me repeat what you know about what language is and what you know about what learning is, how learning takes place. These are the two things that form the basis of any method or approach to language teaching. So people who believe that language is a system of structures and so on, their goal in language teaching is to teach them the system, teach them all the structures, basic structures of English with limited vocabulary, and make them repeat after that. You test them in the examination, fill in the blanks, use the correct tense form, use the correct article, preposition, and things like that. So there are 2 or 3 methods that are following this approach. You must have heard some of these in your B.Ed if you had done your B.Ed program: grammar translation method, audiolingual method, and so on. I'm not going to descriptive detail about each of these methods. I'll only highlight what they focus on, what they emphasize, what they stress. First of all, they say that you have to master all the structures, basic structures of the language, if you want to know how to use it. So the teacher and the materials textbook gives you the particular structure, its form, similar sentence, lots of example sentences following that pattern, and then exercises where you repeat the same structure in different situations using different words and all that. If you say Rahim is a carpenter, you change Rahim to John and carpenter to somebody, okay, plumber. But you stick to the same structure. You keep repeating it, you drill. So drilling, pattern, practice, repetition, that makes you master the language system, the structure. The second principle behind these methods based on language as a system of structures is you have to keep practicing, you have to keep repeating the same structures until it becomes your habit. Until it becomes your habit. Okay. So once you become a habit, first few days you set the alarm. You want to wake up at 6 o'clock, you set the alarm at 6 o'clock. 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, 2 weeks. After that, even without the alarm, you may be able to wake up at precisely the same time, 6 o'clock. So it has become a habit for you. You don't depend on the alarm clock. Similarly, you don't depend on the teacher. You repeat the same structure, use the same structure through habit. The third point and final point about these methods is there are so many details, but I'm not going into them. The learning of structures and repetition, practicing, all of this is done with only the sentence as the model, sentence as the basic structure, not going beyond the structure. Each sentence will talk about different content, different topic. On the other hand, I mentioned the other one, teaching. First approach is teaching language as structure, as a system of structures. Now, teaching language as communication for communication purposes, where the goal of language learning is to be able to communicate in English, be able to speak in English for a few minutes without hesitation, without fear, confidently, to be able to read a short paragraph or one-page text in English, understand what it is about, to listen to somebody speaking in English, understand what the other person is trying to say, and to be able to write very simple, short text, 3 or 4 sentences, one paragraph, at the school level. Okay. You don't have to write long essays and so on. So the focus in this approach, in this philosophy is you learn the language by using it repeatedly. You learn the language repeatedly by using it. Now, some methods were following this, for example, the situational method. The language syllabus is built around situations at the airport, at the restaurant, at the hotel, in the principal's office, in school, in college. What is the kind of language that you need to use in each of these various situations? What kind of structures you need, what kind of language you need, vocabulary you need. So you practice dialogues, not single sentences. You practice dialogues, conversations in various situations. This was the beginning of teaching language as communication. Now we have come to the other extreme. The another principle of this is the context is important. You cannot learn language separating it from the context. You have to learn language within a certain context. Only then you acquire vocabulary, we'll come to that later, vocabulary acquisition. Third principle is language is interaction. It's not one-way process. It's not my talking all the time. It's not the teacher talking all the time in the class. The students have to participate. Students have to respond. Students have to say a few things. So language is learned better only through interaction, communication between two students, between the teacher and the student, among the students in pair work, group work, and so on. And finally, while the first approach is based on sentence level learning, mastering the structures of each sentence, the communicative approach and the methods that preceded it and that are based on that, they focus on the text, short piece of text. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. How about you? So these three sentences form one text, one piece of communication. You cannot take one sentence separately and then say, how are you? What do you expect the other person to say? So unless the other person responds to the greeting, it is not part of communication. You cannot remove language from the context of situation. You have to learn it only within the context. So this is my brief summary of the various approaches and methods. And I'm not using many of those terms because they are not necessary. What you need to know is, do you believe that language is only consisting of structures to be mastered, learned, repeated after the teacher, practice until they become your habit, routine? Or do you believe that language is what is actually used to convey meaning, to convey what you think, your ideas, feelings, and so on? Language as structure and language as communication. So if there's some time later, I'll talk about two different positions in language as communication. But I think, Elango, I think for the time being, this would be sufficient background for people to be able to understand the questions and listen to the responses.
Thank you, Dr. Ramani. Let me push you a little bit further. When we read any literature on ELT, English language teaching, we come across different kind of terms like direct method, grammar translation method. You also mentioned about the audiolingual method. And without mentioning this particular approach, communicative approach. In the last 50 years, all over the world, people are talking about communicative approach. Do you think communicative approach is the best approach to teach language? If so, how does this particular approach differ from the other kinds of approaches? I'm asking this question because communicative approach is the in thing for about 50 years, half a century, at different levels, whether it's a primary level, secondary level, or tertiary level, everybody is talking about communicative approach. So could you tell us exactly what you mean by this approach, how this particular approach is relatively better than the other kinds of approaches? Do you think this is something that we can follow in rural contexts?
Yeah. As I said earlier, the communicative approach is based on the thinking that language is primarily required for communicating with your neighbors, with other fellow human beings. You don't sit in a room and then practice structures, repeat after them. You are not acquiring language. Language has to be used with somebody else to find out whether you have been successful in expressing yourself. If you have not been clear, the other person will ask you questions to rephrase it, say the same thing in different ways. So until the other person understands what you say or what you write, communication is not complete. So communicative approach, whether it's the in thing or the best method and all that, it is based on a sound principle and understanding of what we know about language learning, is that communication is the key for acquiring a language. You take the example of students who start using mother tongue when they are 18 months old, 2 years old, 3 years old. They didn't go to school, they didn't learn the grammar of the local language, their mother tongue, but they started using the language. They have been using the language for various purposes very successfully. In fact, they also start using new words, new structures which the parents had not heard of earlier from their children. So we learn to communicate before we start studying the grammar, the structure. It's not the other way about. The strong version of the communicative approach is you start using the language, and in the process, you will get mastery over the structures. So use language first, then usage will come automatically. Or if necessary, the teacher can pay attention to some problems in usage later on. But initially, every learner must be encouraged to use the language, even if the student makes mistakes. It doesn't matter. Now, many people think communicative approach cannot be used in rural areas because students don't know English. I think it's a myth. Dr. Mohanraj has made it very clear that before they come to school, they have been exposed to quite a number of English words around them, and they have associated these words with the objects. They go to the shop, they see pictures, they see images, they watch films, they see apple, and then the word apple, they think they relate these two together. Okay. But then when they come to school, we start teaching them A for apple, B for ball. You're simply turning the table around. They already know some words, already at least 50 to 100 words they know. They are not totally ignorant of English. So to satisfy them, the weak version of communicative approach says you learn initially the structures in a controlled, guided way, and then slowly gain confidence in using English in meaningful context on your own. In actual practice, the textbooks may claim that they are following the communicative approach, but they still have grammar exercises based on individual sentences. They still have exercises on synonyms, antonyms, opposites, okay, idioms and phrases, spelling. So there is always a mixture of both of these. You don't have time to experiment by using the strong version. Say, I don't worry about grammar at all. You keep using the language, make mistakes, make mistakes. Parents will get worried, teachers will get worried, they are committing the same mistakes. If you don't correct them, parents will complain that the school is not doing much. So there is a compromise formula built into the communicative approach itself that you can begin wherever you want, and you will take care of both understanding, mastery of the structures, vocabulary, and things like that, and learn to use the language in context. So I would say using the language even in a limited way in the classroom. Even in a limited way in the classroom. Let them answer your question in single words, phrases, or a mixture of mother tongue words and English words. Okay, it doesn't matter. They can even use their mother tongue to answer the questions. If the answer is correct, it means they have understood the question in English and they've been able to answer the question in the local language. So there are many ways in which you can prove that students do know some English when they come to school, and every day some learning takes place through the environment in which they live. School is not the only place where they have to be taught English. I suppose that answers the question to a large extent. So where it is rural area, urban area, let me give my own example. I did my schooling in my mother tongue up to 11th grade, and then I moved to a college. I did my graduation in chemistry, not English. But I've been English teacher for more than 40 years. I've published books, I've trained teachers. I'm talking freely now, without any hesitation, without many mistakes, I think, I suppose. English. So I'm confident of using English. Although I studied in my school days all my subjects only through the medium of Tamil, my mother tongue. You can find plenty of evidences like this of people who did their schooling in mother tongue medium but were able to master English and start using it for various communicative purposes freely and fluently. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt, Dr. Ramani, students do come with some amount of English. Okay, but the problem is they are not able to string the words together. That seems to be a major problem. Even among English teachers say that they are not able to communicate in English with anybody. okay, with their own friends, with their own colleagues. They're not able to use English because rural context. I mean, India is basically rural. All of us know that. And English, although it's about 400 plus years old, because we say that English arrived on our shores right from 1600 onwards, okay, when the East India Company was established. Even today, we are struggling for the basic aspects of English language. You know, many students, we know that at the tertiary level, people say that 75, 95 students are not able to compete in, not able to communicate in English. They're not able to compete with the urban children, so they are being rejected. So this seems to be a major problem. It looks as though the solution is very easy, but in practical terms, in actual terms, students, those who are in rural areas, teachers, those who are in rural areas, some are not able to become a proficient user of English language. So what exactly is the solution? I mean, you seem to imply that learning English is so very easy. And if that is the case, why is that many teachers are not able to communicate in English? Why is that many students are not able to learn English? So the problem seems to be a serious problem. We are struggling
Then,
with several countries where English is not spoken at all.
yeah, I can give at least two reasons and one other example to show that it's not all that difficult. Number one, I'm sorry. How do the children learn to string words to form sentences in their mother tongue? Did anybody teach them how to do it? No. By constantly listening to elders around them start using them, they start with two-word utterances, three-word utterances. So the human mind, human brain is equipped with the ability to form rules based on the language input they get without explicitly studying grammar rules and all that. So this is a human capacity. Let us not undermine the human capacity. Whatever be the language, if you start using it constantly, then it will happen. Now, one of the problems in rural areas is teachers assume, maybe they're right in saying that, they assume that students don't know English. They will not understand any English if they start using English. So they have to start using only the mother tongue. I'm not against using the mother tongue now and then, occasionally, or even 40%, 50%, and all that. We have come back to bilingualism. The bilingual teaching method started in West Bengal in 1926. Michael West, his first report was no. No, the teacher has to keep using English in a very, very simple language, repeat the same idea in many different ways and all that. And all these different ways of expressing the same idea will get into the children's mind, and then they will form their own strings of words to make sentences. This is a natural process. We can't expect the results to appear within a month or 2 days or 3 days. Our problem is we give up easily. We say, oh, I don't think it will work. I don't think it will work. We may not have the time. We have the syllabus to cover. But the first few weeks, even 1 week will do, 2 weeks will do. Let the teacher start using English, very simple English, for very common purposes, to talk about the things around them inside the classroom and ask questions. The students will gradually gain confidence. The strategy is to make them feel comfortable in using English, not be criticized or shouted at by the teacher for any mistakes they make, tolerate their errors, and once they gain confidence, there is no limit to how fast they will learn their language. So all these have to work together. All these have to work together.
Yeah.
Teachers have to be patiently, without giving up easily, have to start using very, very, very simple language. Talk slowly, not very fast. Repeat the same idea. Ask someone else. They don't need a textbook. The first few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, they can use English, only talk about things in the classroom, around about their families, in the school, campus, and so on. Create confidence in them. then they will do it. I have practiced it. I have done it with students with little or no English when they came to college, and I have made them, you know about it, but I
Yeah,
don't want to talk about my experience as it will become personal.
we'll come
But
back to
we
it.
can do this. We can do this, and it's possible if teachers are willing to put in an effort and believe in themselves. They have to believe in themselves that they can make their children start using English. They may not be able to use English very perfectly. I mean, we are not
Yeah.
aiming at that kind of standard.
Yeah, the next question is to Professor Mohanraj. So, when we want to learn any language, though we are talking about English, it could be Japanese, it could be Punjabi or Telugu, Japanese, or whatever the language that we are talking about. How do you start learning the language? Is there any starting point? Like somewhere we need to begin. The problem is like the multifold. I'm not getting into that this point of time. All I want to know from you is that when you want to learn any language, when you want to become a proficient user of language, do you think vocabulary is so very important? And if so, do you think that we could resort to different kind of methods? And what are the methods that are commonly followed by the teachers, especially in rural areas? And do you think there are different ways in which linguistic items, vocabulary items, words can be taught to the students?
Thank you for that question. That's a very interesting question. And in fact, vocabulary forms the basis or the foundation of language. Um, a great linguist called Wilkins said this long ago. He said, without grammar, something can be understood, but without words, nothing can be understood. I think this is an extremely important quote for all of us to remember. These are the foundations, or these are the building blocks of language. Words are the building blocks of language. Now, normally what happens in schools, our schools, is when we teach words, we teach them in isolation. In fact, this is exactly what Professor Ramani was saying. If I teach grammar, if I simply take one sentence, example like, how are you? That has no sense unless there is also a response. In other words, he put the entire sentence in a context or in a situation. Exactly the same thing has to be done with words. Now let's go a little earlier in age. Now, India is a country where the influence of English has been rampant. When I say it is rampant, I just want to say a child starts going to school at the age of 5. We think the child has no exposure to English, but the child already knows quite a few words in English. Things like school. School is an English word. Uniform. These days, all children are familiar with a word like uniform, shoes, bag, books, pencils, paper. All these. There, if in fact, we have made a survey, and on an average, if you think of any Indian language, by the time the child is about 5 or 6 years old, the child has already learned nearly 200 words in English without realizing that these are English words. And there are some extreme cases also. I wouldn't like to go to that. Now, these English words which have got integrated into our language are called loan words in English. This is one. Secondly, there are quite a few words which are simply, they hit us in the face wherever we go. For example, whether you are in a village or in a city, or you are traveling in a bus, or you are traveling from one town to another town, you see huge advertisement hoardings, and nearly 60 to 70% of these hoardings are all in English. And when children are interested in looking at these hoardings and they associate the picture with the word, I think this is an excellent way of developing vocabulary. Why, rather than just give the word and its spelling and its meaning without any illustration, I think if the teachers can use the technique used by the advertisers, um, I think children will certainly stand to gain. There is a strategy to develop vocabulary. Now, this is what is called reading. In fact, Professor Ramani mentioned Michael West's name, who worked in West Bengal. In fact, his major area of operation was Dhaka, of course, in entire Bengal. And he developed a method called the reading method. Now, what was this reading method? It was not really reading, but it was actually vocabulary. He identified as some words which are very, very frequently used in our language. And if a word is more frequently used, I think that's the easiest word for me to learn. And he put all these words in the form of small stories, very small stories, and allowed the children to read these stories and understand. And he called this method as the reading method. Of course, these were all called graded readers, etc. I don't want to go into those details. What happens when I read? There is a difference between reading and listening. When I read, I look at the word and look at the shape of the word, and the shape of the word is formed by its spelling. So if the shape of the word becomes familiar to me, I also become familiar with the word. Now he gives an analogy. The analogy is like this. I keep seeing a large number of people. I'm able to recognize some of them by their face, and also I can put a name to the face. But some people I just recognize, I don't know their names. There are some people I know who names of those people, but I do not really know their face. There are quite a few instances like this. Now, reading is also like this. Vocabulary building is also like this. I have heard some words, but I have never got to see them. When I read, the words that I have heard, the words that I am familiar with become real. They get concretized, and that's one way of learning. Reading is an excellent way of developing vocabulary. And once you build your vocabulary, forming them into sentences is yet another process. Instead of depending too much on rules of grammar, as again, once again, I'll refer to Professor Ramani's example. Once you have the words, the brain has a mechanism by which it can string words together in a sensible way so that these words convey meaning. In fact, the entire approach called the communicative language teaching believes in this. And see, there was also somebody who asked, if this is the case, can there be confidence? I think this also builds confidence in the sense, again, let's go back to what Professor Ramani was saying. If my teacher asks me a question in English, I understand the question and I answer it in my mother tongue. As a teacher, should I accept it or reject it? If I reject it, I'm making my learner lose his confidence. If I accept the answer and say, oh, very good, now you have answered this question in mother tongue. Next time, I would like you to try and give me the answer in English. Even if you go wrong, it's perfectly all right. If by encouraging this, and if we see that the words they have are used in meaningful way, I think they pick up language automatically. This is one way. And reading is probably, once again repeat, reading is one of the best ways by which vocabulary can be developed.
Yeah,
Apart from listening.
Yeah, Ramani, I'll come back to it. We are running slightly out of time. We were told that English is the richest language, as more than 1 million words. Okay, do you think that our learners should familiarize themselves with all the 1 million words? You said that a child comes to school with 200 words. How many words do you think a child should know to become a rather fluent user of English language.
Yeah. Happily, no one in the world knows all the million words. No language expert can be familiar with all the words. In fact, operationally, as Michael West put it, he identified 2,000 simple words, or this he called the general service list of English words. 2,000 words is much more than adequate. Today, Oxford English Dictionary has enlarged this particular scope and made it 3,000 words. If you go to some of the editions of Oxford English Dictionary, at the end, you will find what is called defining vocabulary list. That's about 3,000 words, which most of us, I'm when I say most of us, I am referring to the teachers who are in the audience. Most of us know these 3,000 words. With these 3,000 words, it is possible for us to fairly easily communicate with each other. 3,000 is quite a sufficient number. That's
Thank
my.
you. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Ramani, grammar, you refer to it. Some of us who believe that grammar is not really necessary, but what's happening in our country is that we are introducing language and grammar at the same time, right at the first standard level itself. And I personally believe that grammar is more of an impediment. It impedes learners learning the language. So do you think that the grammar should be taught? At what level do you think grammar should be taught? Are there interesting ways in which grammar could be taught? Because one of the attendees asked this question, Meenakshi, she wants to know how can we make English grammar interesting at the primary level. So can you tell us how to go about teaching grammar and making it interesting to primary level students?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Again, grammar, by grammar, we mean the rules that we find in books like Renan Martin's grammar or some other grammar book. Grammar is not a grammar book. Grammar merely refers to the underlying structures in the language that we use. Now, at the primary level, if we interact with students using simple language, simple sentences, they are acquiring grammar without being aware of it, without being conscious of it. They may not be able to say that this is a noun, this is a verb, or this is a personal noun, this is a abstract noun or a common noun. It doesn't matter. Grammatical terms actually create more problems. We don't need to use terms at the primary level, at least till grade 3, to teach grammar. We don't teach grammar. We make children acquire grammar unconsciously by the way we use simple sentences, by the way the course books use sentences in the reading text, and so on. Simple present tense. One context in which simple present tense is primarily used is talk about one's regular habits, routine. Okay. What time do you get up? I get up at 6 o'clock. What do you do then? So you start describing what you do every day, which is habitual, routine action, and you are forced to use simple present tense without knowing it. When you ask somebody to talk about what happened the previous day at home, they have to use past tense. If they make mistakes, let them make mistakes. But the teacher rephrases it using the correct form, tense form, without saying what you are saying is wrong. You have to use the sentence, the tense as I'm using it, without openly telling the student that something is wrong. By constantly rephrasing, repeating it, giving the correct form, you are giving the input to the children to modify their knowledge of the language. So after some time, they will no longer use the incorrect tense form, they will use the correct tense form. Even forms like goad, I don't want to go into the details because a lot of research says that children learn wrong forms and then correct themselves without anybody telling them how to do it. There are also instances of a teacher trying to correct, even the mother trying to correct the child, but the child repeats the same mistake. Because our openly teaching them grammar doesn't help them to have a better knowledge of grammar, better grasp of grammar. It has to happen in the child's brain. Similarly, instructions. Please come here, open the door. Can you close the door, please? Imperative sentence. You don't use the term imperative sentence by giving instructions, by giving orders or steps in a recipe how to make something. The teachers have to devise or think of at least 3 or 4 real life contexts in which each of the tense forms is most frequently used, and use these contexts to teach them that particular grammatical aspect without having to tell them the terms. The terms are introduced because the examination system expects them. When these terms are used in class 10 public examination, you start burdening the children with the same terms from class 1. Is it not fair? They can be taught the terms when they come to middle school because they've already understood. Okay, what form of the verb to use to describe your routine or what happened in the past, how to describe a process and things like that. There are so many contexts in which they learn grammar automatically, unconsciously. You introduce the terms much later when they come to middle schools. At the primary school level, you only have to make them say as many sentences as possible. And if they make a mistake, don't point out the mistakes directly, but you repeat it in a different way, the correct way. You rephrase it in the correct way. And by constantly doing it over a period of time, the children's mental grammar will get set. That's what we want. We don't want them to say, what is wrong with this sentence? Use a correct grammatical term. No. If they're able to say something is wrong with this, I think they should better say this way. They have the grammar with them. That is grammatical knowledge.
Yeah, thank you,
Not
Dr.
the
Ramani.
ability to use terms, yes.
Yeah, two things you mentioned which are extremely important because many of us are concerned with the teaching grammar. You said teach grammar without labels and teach grammar relating to the real life context. Very well articulated. Another important aspect that I would like to ask Professor Mohanraj is pronunciation. You know, when it comes to mother tongue, we accept all kinds of accents, all kinds of pronunciations. But when it comes to English, we always say that we need to speak like the native speakers. Okay, we need to use correct accent, acceptable accent. And we used to use the term RP, received pronunciation, though nobody talks about it. Why this kind of an obsession to speak English like the native speakers?
This is an unfortunate mindset that most of us have in India. In fact, the received pronunciation, as it is popular for a different reason. It's popular because that's the only model that has a complete description. So we can take it as a standard, and nobody can really achieve the standard. How close we are to it, how far we are from the standard is what we can measure. That's one. Secondly, when I talk, what should really matter is how many people understand me. If I use the British English, probably in the group, probably only 10% of them may understand. And in that case, I'm distancing myself much more than communicating with them. If it is possible for me to make myself what is called intelligible, is it possible for somebody to understand what I say? It could be a little deviant. Certainly, it could be a little deviant from the standard pronunciation. But this is how most of my friends understand. This is how most of the people understand. If that purpose is served, I think that's what we should be looking for. However, within this, there can be certain things which can be called gross errors. Gross errors means where there is no relation between how the word has to be pronounced and how the word is actually said by me. If that is there, I cannot immediately think of an example. If I could think of an example, I could have certainly made it better. Now, if such gross errors are there, okay, there is one example. Future. I heard somebody pronounce it as future. Future is certainly way away from how it is pronounced as future. Now, if there are such deviances, I think then the teacher has to come and help. And what is the way in which we can know whether the word how the word has to be pronounced? I think dictionary is an excellent example. Again, I don't need to say that one has to go to a transcription, etc. It's certainly not necessary. You can learn a lot of pronunciation by listening to others, people in who you have confidence. In fact, today we have television channels which are quite strong, which reach almost the entire part of India. And on television, fortunately, most of the news anchors on televisions have fairly good pronunciation. And if we can listen to them, and if we can use them as a model, I think our pronunciation stands to change, our pronunciation stands to become better. These are some of the things I could say. The going by standard British pronunciation is certainly not essential. It's not advised.
Thank you, Professor Mohanraj. You mean that intelligibility is more important than the
Intelligibility, yeah.
next question is to Professor Ramani. We are running short of time. Very briefly, we're going to touch on two important aspects. One is the language skills. How do you think that a teacher working in a rural context can become a good user of English language, a proficient user of English language? What are the ways? Because we are tied up with several things, okay, and we don't find time to equip ourselves, because we know that a teacher is the only source for most of the learners to get decent exposure to English. And most of the teachers don't seem to possess that kind of a quality. So could you tell us different ways in which a teacher working in a rural context, in a primary context, can improve his or her linguistic competence?
Yeah, I think it's a problem area that you have highlighted, and there is a solution. First of all, let's not try to improve the overall language competence of the teachers. That's time consuming and it differs from one teacher to another. We have to identify the specific areas of difficulty that a person has or deficiencies in language competence and then address it. But what we can do immediately is to focus on their use of English within the classroom. Because the only time the children get exposed to English is in the English classroom. At least during that one period of time per day, the teacher should use as much of correct English, good English as possible. Now, this is called classroom language. The teacher's classroom language. Students also can be taught classroom language. When the teacher enters the classroom, he or she begins with greetings. And then the lesson goes on. Towards the end, when the bell rings, the teacher says, "See you tomorrow. Bye. Remember the homework," etc., etc. So during this period, what are the purposes for which the teacher has to use English in the classroom? Greeting the children, reviewing the previous lesson, summarizing the previous lesson, asking questions to check their understanding, beginning a new lesson, starting a new lesson, explaining things, asking questions, responding to answers of the students, checking their answers, putting them in groups or pairs, asking them to work independently, asking them to open the textbook, point to a particular page in the textbook. Okay. So there are many things for which the teacher has to use English during the class period. And if the teacher picks up useful phrases or expressions for these various purposes to be used within the class period, then 60 to 70% of the problem will be solved, because during the class period, children will be exposed only to good and correct English from the teacher. They will not be influenced by poor English of the teacher. Now, this is the solution. What is the source? Some of the participants may be familiar with Pinterest, Pinterest, Pinterest. So it's you can Google search, and then if you sign in for Pinterest free, there is no fee. They will send you every 2 days, 3 days, every week, lots and lots of materials, posters you can download for grammar, tense forms, prepositions, articles, plus there is a large amount of material on classroom language, teachers' classroom language. How does a teacher greet the students? How does a teacher ask for the homework? How does a teacher do this or that in the classroom? At least 30 to 40 images are there where these phrases are listed under categories. The teachers can practice these expressions over a period of time and then become masters of these phrases. They can feel confident also that they are using good English in the classroom. They are not making mistakes.
Yeah, thank you,
But
Dr. Ramani.
improving their general competence, it takes more time. Yeah.
Organizers want us to take the audience questions. The last question from me, very briefly, Professor Mohanraj, could you tell us about, because one other area of development for teachers is besides the language competence, the professional competence, teaching competence. So many training programs are offered. Do you think these programs are really useful for them? If not, what do you think is the best training program for the teachers to improve their professional competence, their teaching competence?
There are quite a, yeah, as you rightly said, there are quite a few programs that are being offered as far as professional development courses are concerned. In fact, professional development is something that cannot be taught in a training course. It's a continuous process, and a lot of effort has to be put in by the teachers themselves. There are various ways in which we can do this. One of the simplest ways is do what is called come together to form a small group. We call this a teacher development group. It's purely a voluntary movement. Means I teach in a school. Nearby there are 5 other schools where exactly the same syllabuses are being followed. So in 5 schools, in each school, there are 2 teachers of English. So if from all the 5 schools, we will be about 10 teachers of English. Can we meet once in a week? Can we discuss our problems? Can we find solutions to our problems? Can begin as a good professional development exercise. I think this is one of the things that most of the teachers should do, sharing problems and finding solutions to themselves. There are also other larger associations like ELTAI, for example, English Language Teachers Association of India, and they can become members of that, and within that they can become members of special interest groups, etc. Or they can, on their own, try to solve some problems by taking up what is called action research. I'm sure all the teachers have been introduced to what is called action research as part of their B.Ed program. And if they get involved in action research, and if they try to solve some of their own problems, I think that's another way of developing themselves. Now, all that the teacher training program or the professional development program does is give them a set of hints or give them a set of strategies. It's very nice to go to a training program, listen to those strategies, feel happy, and come back. But more important than going to the teacher training program is coming back to the school and practicing all those strategies and try to develop myself. That's the most important. And there is nothing like self-development. One has to try on one's own.
Yeah,
That's my.
Yeah, thank you so much. So there are about 4 or 5 questions, and I think most of these questions were addressed when we were talking to the attendees. But I would like to, take one particular question, and Professor Ramani can respond to it initially. Then Professor Mohan can join. And this question seems to be very, very vital. Many students have the so-called English phobia. How do you think that the fear of English can be removed from them, and how do you think that we can make our learners to speak in English? I mean, looking at all the questions, this seems to be the major concern of the teachers. Okay, with that, we will end and we will hand it over to Aparna. So, responses from you both. One, removing the phobia of English. Secondly, making the learners to converse in English.
Yeah, with regard to the phobia, the reason for the phobia is that we as teachers have always made the students feel that they cannot use English on their own. We start teaching a lesson. What do? We identify some words as difficult words or hard words, write them on the board, explain their meanings. So without the teacher's help, the students cannot read the text on their own. So we are making it very clear directly to them. So students lose confidence. So they depend on the teacher for learning to read a passage. Otherwise, they say, too difficult, I can't read it. Because they have been used to being guided by the teacher today. They are not confident of speaking because teacher talks all the time. They don't give them the chance to practice, try, make mistakes, and so on. We don't give them practice and listening themselves because the only person they listen to is the teacher in the class. We don't give them opportunities to write on their own at least 1 or 2 sentences because the teacher writes the composition on the board and asks them children to copy it. Leave letter, or the joke, as I'm suffering from fever, I request you to kindly grant me leave for 2 days. The whole school will suffer from fever and they won't leave only for 2 days. Can they not write this one sentence on their own? Some people can suffer from stomach ache, other people from pain in the eye, sore throat. Instead of 2 days, they can ask for leave for 1 day or 3 days. But we think we have made them feel that you take everything from me. You don't try to take any risk with the language. You don't try anything on your own. You'll make mistakes. You'll lose marks. So the phobia has been created unconsciously, not deliberately, unconsciously by the teachers themselves, by their own practice, teaching practice in the class. One way of removing it that, for example, vocabulary, I want to supplement that. Table. Put a cloth on the table. What is it? Tablecloth. Where is the cloth sold? Cloth shop. Shop window. Window curtain. Curtain cloth. They can string at least 2 words together to form longer phrases, noun phrase to begin with. There are so many techniques they can follow. So once they learn to coin phrases by putting 2 words together, okay, black shirt. Shirt is a single word, black is another word. Black shirt, white shirt, red shirt, a black t-shirt. So they can always be encouraged to expand the phrase by adding 1 or 2 more words in the appropriate way. And then they'll say, oh, I've used 3 words together. I've used 4 words together. I've used 1 sentence together. I've spoken 2 sentences together. So confidence building is the key to language learning. No
Thank you, Professor.
method, no
Yeah,
method can improve it. No syllabus, no textbook can do it. Only confidence building by the teacher in the class.
Professor Mohanraj.
Yeah, I think Professor Ramani has answered it fairly comprehensively. I would like to reiterate only one point. It's the teacher who induces fear in the learner. That's what makes them uh, frightened by offering overcorrection. Now, in order to overcome this, there is a strategy. Most of you must be familiar with what is called language games. Why are language games so very important? One is our classroom atmosphere is generally very formal, and because it is formal, I think students become tense, and under that
Ramani.
tension, they also get frightened. So, what we have to do is language games. Now, the principle of language games is you are taking away the attention of the learner from language use to something else called playing. While playing, the child also uses language unconsciously. And while the child is engaged in this game, the child is not even aware whether that language used is correct or incorrect, because the most important thing that the child has is, okay, I have this message. Does my partner get the message right? That becomes the major objective. In doing this, through errors, by making errors, the child also learns language. I would recommend a large number of language games. In fact, there are quite a few books that are available. In fact, most of the recently published textbooks have quite a few activities and language games put into it. And the major reason for this is to relax the atmosphere and help the children learn language without fear. This is the idea.
Thank you, sir.
That's
I'm going to wind up now by emphasizing the fact that I think the most important thing, whatever the language that we teach, whether we teach English or some other language, creating love for the language, okay, is the key thing. That's the most important thing. From these two discourses, I think we come across this idea very clearly. So create love for the language. You can create love for the language only when a teacher is a proficient user of language. Only when the teacher is a competent user of the language. Only when the teacher is a fluent user of the language. With this, we end. I would like to end with an announcement. This year, Teachers' Day celebration, obviously September 5th, ELTAI is organizing a series of events, competitions for the students, competitions for the teachers, school students separately from college students. All the events are social media based, like the Twiterature, uh, spam poetry, and e-posters and things are like that. There are different interesting contests, and the prize are going to be given, and we expect you to take part in those events. With this, I would like to thank the organizers, Jaslyn as well as Aparna, for giving us this particular opportunity. Over to you, Aparna.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very informative and fruitful session. And I think, and for helping out our teachers by answering some of their questions. Teaching English sounds very easy, but people often struggle. And today, I, for one, learned a lot of new things and a lot of research studies that I will look forward to read. And also, one thing that Professor Mohanraj said, that the role of a teacher is also a very key aspect while teaching, so that it doesn't bring any fear for the student. So that was one thing that I really liked that Professor Mohanraj said. And yes, a lot of ideas were discussed, and I hope the teachers will implement the ideas discussed in their classroom. It was a delight to have you on our session, and we hope that we will get to work with you again. Thank you so much once again for coming for the session.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Before we end our session, we will be sharing the winners of Solve the Challenge competition. But before that, I would like to show the content library of Gurushala, where we can find a lot of content pieces and resources that we can use in our classrooms. As we can see on our screen, we are at the home page, on the home page of Gurushala website, which is www.gurushala.co. When we are on the home page, the first thing we have to make sure is that we log in. I have already logged in, so my account can be seen as Gurushala. But to log in, we can log in through our Gmail ID, phone number, and also through Facebook. So that will not be a difficult process for our teachers. As we come to our homepage, we see a lot of features, from courses to staff room, research corner, and content library. As I click on content library, the page will open, which has a lot of content pieces, more than 8,000 content pieces that we can find. On our left side, we can simply filter our content pieces based on the subjects, class wise. Again, content type, do we want an introduction video? Do we want a concept slideshow? Do we want a quiz? Do we want a worksheet? So we can we can filter our the content that we have on our screens according to our needs. Apart from that, so because we are discussing English language teaching, I'm going to show some of the content pieces that are on our website by using the filter. And as I click on English, I can see that all the content which is available, which is related to English language, is going to be there on our screen. So accordingly, whichever topic, whichever theme that you are teaching for your classroom today, you can pick out the pieces and you can directly show it to your students through the video chat or through the video classes or even through WhatsApp. So this was the content library of our website. We also have a lot of places like staff room where you can connect to other teachers who are a part of Gurushala, all the teachers from all over India. Apart from that, we also have teacher communities on our left. Here it includes very small communities, very small groups that the teachers have created. It has been created for them or by them, and they can discuss on certain topics. For example, if we see on our screen, there's a group of managing time, so teachers can discuss certain ways on how to manage time. Similarly, a lot of groups are there. So this was a very small glimpse of our content library that the Gurushala has. The link to the content library is given on the Facebook description box of this session. And now the time has come, and we will announce the winners of our competition. As you can see on this screen, here are the people who have won the Solve the Challenge competition. The competition was to find out a problem, find out an issue that they were facing in the society, and how will you explain that to your students, along with how will you solve it. So the participants all created videos of themselves and posted it and sent it to us through a Google form. So here are the top 8 winners. Miss Shobha Gurmukh Das Methwani, Miss Minakshi Huda, Miss Neeru Bhatia, Mr. Satyajit Pramanik, Mr. Akhilesh Kumar Dobal, Mr. Umar Sheikh, Miss Chandni Debral, and Miss Neeta Nivruti Shete. So these were the top 8 winners. Congratulations. Your prizes will be given to you soon. Uh, so, uh, the Gurushala, our Samwad, has come on a final note. We hope you log in today and take a look at all the resources which might benefit you as a teacher. We will keep having such webinars. You can leave a comment on what kind of webinar you want next. We will definitely take your suggestions. In case you have any more questions you want to ask, you can log into Gurushala and visit our staff room and teacher communities to share your questions or ideas. Stay connected with Gurushala by liking our Facebook page and subscribing to our YouTube channel. We hope you have a great day. Happy teaching.